Hi, I'm Sophie from Kidsmoke. We are going to talk through some tracks on our new album, A Vision in the Dark. So we're going to start off with Passenger because that is the first track on the album. So I hadn't been at the drum recordings, I was away, so I was like, cool, yeah, I'll just come in, everything will be done. James had put the bass down, so that was great. And I knew that the first thing I was going to do was put the guitars down for Passenger. And one of the lads was like, just to warn you, it is a bit faster than we'd practiced. I was like, yeah, okay, no, that'll be fine. And then I sat down, got all my stuff set up, Russ played the track, and it was like, kind of like being shot out of a cannon when you weren't expecting it.
Passenger was quite a straightforward one. I wanted, Lance is kind of gets a bit fed up with all the weird tunings he has to go into live sometimes. So with this one, I thought I'll just try and write a really kind of basic Kidsmoke kind of song. So I just used like C, G, A minor, F. So I just wanted to see if I could get that into any of our songs, but I wanted to kind of put something a little bit different in the middle of that. So.
We originally intended to start with some sort of like ambient instrumental, something to ease the listener in. But once we finished this song, it just made more sense to hit the ground running. And I think it really sets the tone well for the rest of the album. So the lyrics are about sort of losing control of your life and just feeling like you're just going through the motions, sort of being swept along and feeling sort of powerless to stop it. The instrumentation on this track is so joyous and so fast paced that I wanted to try and counterbalance that with like a darker lyrical theme, the same way as Andy Schorf does on a lot of his songs.
I really like the syncopation, especially in the chorus when you've got some of the rhythms and the way in which they overlap, and sometimes they fall over the bar. It's not just the drums, it's the bass and it's the melody, so I really like that. I really love when you have interesting rhythms within music. One of my other favourite parts of the song is the layered vocal harmonies, especially in the chorus, and they sort of all dip in one after the other, and then there's a sort of flourish in the chorus. You get a 3-part, and I think it really sounds quite dreamy, so I'm a big fan of that.
Turn this back around. I'm moving on to God knows where. I'm dressed to kill the time. I'm moving on to God knows where. I'm dressed to kill the time.
So I really like the harmonies in Passenger. I think it sets it off really nice. It sets the tone of the album, which is let's stick harmonies everywhere, which is one of my favourite things to do at all times. However, it did take me quite a long time to learn how to play that guitar part and the chorus and sing the harmony at the same time, which is totally my fault for writing silly guitar parts. So quite a few people ask how you play the chorus of Passenger, because it sounds kind of open, stringy. And that's because I do play an open string in the first part. I have a capo on the 4th fret here, and then this B string is open at 1 fret, then a little hammer on pull-offs, back up there. Voila.
So we started off with the guide tracks perfectly in time and in tune. Everything went amazing. And then Ash did smash some drums, didn't you, mate?
We did, yeah. I think a successful day. Hopefully we'll get a lot done tomorrow.
Didn't even have dinner, did we, mate?
Didn't even have dinner, which is unheard of for me.
From the minute I heard the demo of Layla's Love, I knew that it was going to be something different than we'd done before.
This is possibly my favourite track on the album. When James sent it over, I was listening to a lot of 80s music, but a lot of the chords and chord sequences in this song reminded me of Prefab Sprout, so I wanted to take it as far down that route as possible. And I really like how Prefab Sprout sort of utilised the male and female vocals, so I wanted to try and do that. So the part of the song where Sophie takes lead and I respond to her lines is maybe my favourite moment on the album. It's just turned out exactly as I wanted it to.
You know, I've done harmonies all across all of the other recordings that we've done with Kidsmoke, but I've never really had a bit where it's just me singing, and I feel like this sort of interplay between my voice and Lance's voice really helps to tell the story. Reminds me a lot of Streets of Your Town by the Go-Betweens, which is one of my favourite songs.
I remember writing this just after I got back from Sorrento, and yeah, I was in quite a good holiday mood. I think this song started off like more straight. It's like a lot of the album really, where it's kind of trying to find kind of different tunings that I haven't really heard songs written in before, that I can sort of find new chords, at least to me, and then almost try and relearn guitar in a sense, try and make up chord shapes and just find sequences that kind of work together.
It took a little bit longer than some of the others to piece together in rehearsals when we were putting the song together, and some of that was the groove. It wasn't quite sitting right to begin with, and then we tried bringing in 16s, like 16th notes in the verse, and as soon as we did that, it sort of all started to fall into place. Again, really love the harmonies on this one and the way they all blend together. There were some interesting note choices on this one, and it took a little bit of tweaking. We were trying to figure out which notes were working, which weren't, so it took a little bit of piecing together. But yeah, Layla's Love was one of those tracks. As soon as we finished it, we knew, yeah, that's going on the album.
I'm just doing the GoPro because everyone's going mental. Can you play that again, Russ? We've just had a little moment where everyone's going crackers.
Baby, the sun won't rise over you, but I know we
Victory!
are still together. Layla's love is the only love I'll never lose.
Colourfield to me is just like a short, sharp nugget of a pop tune. It's quite simple in terms of the textures. Like, there's never too much going on at one time, but I think James has absolutely nailed the bass on this one. It's such a cool bass line.
I think when James sent this over, he kind of saw it as a bit of a throwaway, but there was just something I really liked about it. The lyrics are about overthinking, sort of catastrophizing, building stuff up in your head. And I really like it when songwriters use humour in their lyrics, but it's not something that I find easy to do, so I was quite happy when I got some sort of self-deprecating type humour in this one. And I really like the bass line on the verses. It's not very often that James lets loose on the bass. And it's just a really nice part. It kind of drives those verses forward.
I had like about an hour to record a demo, so I tried to sort of impose that time limit on myself. So that started with the bass. So Yeah, it's one of those songs. Once the bass line was down, it was kind of easy to steer it.
So it's just drums and bass together for the sort of core of it, and then you have parts from Lance and Sophie which just dip in and just add that sort of glisten on the top.
I'm really pleased with how it turned out. Here's how he played the chorus.
So at the end of the song, there are 3 cymbal hits. I used a few different things. So I used the bell of a few different cymbals. I had some finger cymbals, so just the 2 little cymbals that you hold and you ting them together. I also had this sort of bell chime thing, and you sort of hit it and it just rings out really loud. So I used that at the end. When we were trying to figure out what we were going to use for that end, I made the unfortunate mistake of enthusiastically declaring that I've got a little bell. I'm reminded on a regular basis, so that's fun.
I don't really know what I was aiming for. I don't think I had any particular influences in mind, but I think now it kind of... I hear like a bit of Pains of Being Pure at Heart in that one. Maybe it was in the choices that we made with the mix.
Track number 4 is Higher. This is an old song. It featured on our very first EP of the same name, which came out in 2013. It's one of the first songs James and I wrote when we started Kidsmoke. I think we were listening to more sort of lo-fi stuff back then, like Wild Nothing's first album, Gemini. We were trying to emulate that sort of sound. But as the years have gone by, I kind of wanted a more, like a bigger sounding version of the song. So when we went into the studio, it was just a good opportunity to try that out. And I think it turned out really nice. It's quite a personal song. It was written as a sort of like a letter or a message to somebody who was sort of second guessing, so a bit of self-doubt going on, and it was just like it's kind of like a message of encouragement. I still get emotional now and again when I hear it, especially this newer version, when Sophie's sort of really high harmony comes in on the last chorus. It's just a really nice moment on the record.
There's not a lot happening on the drums. It's quite simple. I think that's important with this song because there's a lot happening over the top of it. You have lots happening in the way of vocal harmonies, and it's more, I think, the rhythm of the vocals as well. So some of the phrases, they start and they stop in unusual places in the bar. Sometimes a phrase will end at the beginning of the next bar. So I think the drums stay quite simple and sort of to the point throughout the verse, and it gives the vocal melody a little bit more license to move around and be a little bit more free.
When we were recording, we got all of the tracks down and everything was going really well, and we needed some bits and pieces to pad it out, just to sort of get the track up here, you know, where it needed to be. We decided I was going to put in some stacked harmonies just before the chorus comes in. So I went into the vocal booth and we had a kind of rough starting point. Russ, our producer, ended up just firing notes at me to sing, and he wasn't giving me very much of a break in between each note, so I would do a couple of takes of one note, I would get a good one, do another one, try this one next, oh let's put a low one in, let's put a really really high one in. And after about 20 minutes of doing that, I realised that I was about to pass out because I had been breathing so irregularly that I was obviously slightly oxygen depleted, so I had to have a sit down.
Higher started in a tuning that I don't know how I ended up in, so that's E, A, C sharp, E, B, E. which is mainly why we don't do it live, because it's quite hard to get the guitar to kind of stay in tune. It's definitely got a Smith's kind of Headmaster's Ritual kind of vibe. I just find it easier to write songs in tunings like that, because usually when you hear a chord, it doesn't automatically make you think of something else. Normally when you're writing songs and you're in like a chord, or you've done 2 or 3 chords, and you know that, okay, this is kind of similar to that, and if I go to there, that's similar to that, so it kind of narrows your thinking sometimes. But I think when you end up in a tuning like this, you don't really, it's like learning the guitar again almost. You're trying to make up chords.
The sequence throughout the verse, it's actually 10 bars long, which is slightly unusual. Normally within pop music and just general Western music, they tend to follow 4-bar, 8-bar phrases, but this has the extra 2 tagged on the end, so it's slightly longer. But yeah, I think with this song there's a lot of emotion in there. I think the way in which the chords rise and the melody rises and they fall as well, it sort of takes you on a bit of a journey.
All the track's done, all the bass is down. What's next is to come back, get Lance's guitars done. Look at that beach there, lovely.
There's a song in the ether called Fat Pigeon. I've heard bits of it, but the fact that it's called Fat Pigeon is putting me off. I'm not gonna lie.
If Fat Pigeon makes the album, it didn't go well.
Sonically, She Takes You Under was quite a leap forward for us. I think the more we threw at it, the better it sounded, and that doesn't always happen. In the studio, sometimes Russ says more is more, which generally in life I tend to disagree with, but in this case, more was more.
I love playing this one live. Although I wasn't in a great place when I wrote the lyrics for this. Whenever I hear it now, it takes me back to our first gigs abroad when we played Breakout West in Canada. So it holds a lot of great memories for me. Just hours of playing the card game Shithead in the hostel, and Ash eating the biggest portion of poutine that I'd ever seen in my life, and just seeing some great bands and meeting some lovely people. So singing it is quite cathartic for me nowadays, and I think you can hear a lot of our 80s influence in this one too.
I wrote that demo whilst we'd already started recording the album, and I kind of knew once I had the demo for that it needed to go on there, because it just felt like a bigger sounding song than some of the others that we kind of had for consideration. We wanted like quite a big song to end the first side, so we had kind of the Bluest You in mind for ending the second side, but we didn't really have an equally bigger sounding song for the end of that first side, so that's kind of what we want to sort of end the first half.
I think my favourite bit is the breakdown in the middle section, when it sort of all drops down and then it builds up. What I did during that middle section, I sort of kept time and played a sort of rhythm on the rim of a tom. That was quite influenced by Body Snatchers, a track by Radiohead, where it does a similar sort of thing and it drops on the rims. And I've always loved that bit, and I really wanted to incorporate something like that in one of the songs in the album, and it felt like the perfect time to do it in the middle of this song.
And the chords for this song actually came from me trying to learn how to play a computer game track from a game called Fez. It's got a dead good soundtrack, and that had I think there's a track on that called Home. So I was trying to work out the chords for that. It sort of starts with something like that. It sort of has that kind of moving. But then that sort of led into kind of development of that, but that's definitely like where it started from, because I really liked those chords. For the middle bit, that came from Sophie kind of laying the gauntlet down and saying she wanted something in 6 timing in the middle.
One part of it that I really like is the guitar outro, because it just seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then that's the sort of conclusion of the song. It took me a while to learn how to play that on guitar, because sometimes you write a piece and then you're like, I'll worry about that later, you know, don't worry about having to play it live, but then you actually have to play it live and you're like, what do I do? Because there's a harmony section, harmonised guitars, so I had to program a harmonising pedal so that when I click the foot switch I get this extra harmony because it bends it out of key. So yeah, that was a bit daft. Kaleidoscope in its very first iteration as a demo track in our like big folder of demos that we have. It's a really cool track and we worked on it for a while and it kind of never stuck, but I was always really impressed with this chorus and the lyrics and the harmonies, and we worked on adding, you know, the 3 parts and how it goes through.
Kaleidoscope was a part of the bigger song, like a normal song that we had.
It's like it's just a brief, it's 70 seconds long, it's just a slight pause and an inhale before you get the punch straight into Rising Sun.
It's kind of meant to be a marker for the end of side 1 and the start of side 2. So Kaleidoscope is a full song, but we decided to take the chorus out and strip it back and record it sort of acoustically for the record. I think we intended on having quite a few of these little moments on the record initially. Sort of little instrumentals or you know, little snippets of tracks, but it just didn't work out that way.
When we were coming to decide what we were going to put to start the second side of the album, because we always knew we wanted it on vinyl, so when you turn it over you get this nice little intro snippet. Kaleidoscope seemed to fit perfectly with that.
This might have been one of the last things we did for the album, I think, is try and kind of work on this and trying to time it so it wouldn't go on for too long.
It could have gone a lot of different ways. We talked about, you know, doing it a bit quicker. We recorded a couple of different types of guitar, and in the end I'm really pleased with how it came out, but I'm also quite excited to revisit the song and record it in its proper full form too. So you may see Kaleidoscope 2.0 at some point in the future.
Yeah, it was nice seeing this one come together because I think it was lovely hearing those harmonies build, and I think you can hear that we're influenced by the Beach Boys on this one. But it's really nice that Kaleidoscope survived, and I think it's a nice sort of moment to catch your breath on the record.
Later, outside your pale skin froze, together wrapped in a ring of smoke, say won't ever leave for you when the light of your life is sleeping close. The sun will always shine again a little later.
Track number 7 is Rising Sun. This is another one I really enjoy playing live. It's really fast-paced, energetic, you can really get into it, and it seems to be a bit of a fan favourite as well. When James sent this over, the guitar riff really reminded me of something the band Dive would do. So I remember going back into their song Doused for inspiration to try and tap into the feel and the energy of that song. And when I was flicking through my lyric book, 2 little lines sort of stood out. One was, I feel your love, and the other was, I don't want to follow. and I was just trying to think of a way I could link the two somehow. The song ended up being about pushing against what people expect of you, even if those expectations are coming from the people closest to you. It was a really enjoyable experience recording this one because we went up to West Kirby to record with Bill Ryder Jones, and I'm such a big fan of the choral and Bill's solo stuff, so it just felt like a great opportunity to sort of work with somebody I really admire.
It was really interesting to work with Bill and, you know, sort of understand his ways of working. So it was just different, and it was a lot of fun. He was a great guy to work with. We were in the studio for one day, so it was quite a challenge to get all of the parts done. I think fortunately on that day we were all on the ball and we recorded everything, I think in 1 or 2 takes at the most. There were a few extra little tweaks that we did with Russ, our producer, in Penman Mauer, but like I said, the most of it we got down with Bill, and yeah, it sounded great. I really put a lot of energy into the drum performance on that one. I was really sort of hammering it and going for it. I wanted it to be quite a raw, driving sound, and yeah, hopefully that comes through on the record.
Rising Sun started with, I just kind of wanted like the fastest song that we had up to this point. I think I was listening to My Bloody Valentine's Sue's Fine, and then I basically just kind of matched the tempo to that, and kind of just started with bass, just kind of put any sort of, you know, just one note down just to keep have something to work with, and then it's really weird. Like it doesn't take much to set a song down a path, and you kind of know what to do with the rest of it as soon as you have the first, you know, literally just one note on the bass, and just very quickly kind of finding those notes, you kind of know what to do with the rest of it. So it was quite an easy song to finish off once we had that.
So Rising Sun came together really quickly. I think we had pretty much all of the track mapped out within one rehearsal, and then it was so much fun. I think we played it like 1 billion times in a row, so we were all like knackered and ready for bed by the time we finished in the studio in rehearsals. So yeah, it's always a really fun one to do live. It replaced our long-time set finisher Another World, which was a contentious move, but I think it really works as a set closer. It's just full of energy and just leaves people wanting to hear more. Hopefully, I don't know, you tell me.
So this is our recording chart. We called it the Sacred Parchment. We made a list of all the parts we needed to record, and as we finished them, we ticked them off. Quite a few things on here that you might notice are different from when we were recording and putting the album together to the final release. I think there are 4 songs that didn't make it. Another Dreamer, First to the Last, Loop the Cycle, and River City. River City was going to be an instrumental. The working title for the album was Still Dreams, Dead Ahead, but we ended up going with A Vision in the Dark. We all preferred that. There are quite a few things in here that I forgot that we did. Some of the synth and percussion I completely forgot about. There's a track on there called Going Nowhere that was renamed to Still Dreams. But yeah, there are a lot of differences from the Sacred Parchment to what actually made it on the album. Feel free to quiz us on any of it.
So track number 8 is Take Me to the River. This is another old song that was on our debut EP that we recorded with Ben Tro from Sisu in 2013. Another one that we wanted to re-record for the album. This is possibly our most well-known song. It was featured on an episode of Black Mirror called Archangel, which was really cool. I remember when James sent this to me and I was kind of playing the chords. I had Spotify open on my laptop, and I think I was listening to some sort of playlist, and the Al Green song Take Me to the River was in that playlist, and I just remember singing that line over the chords that James had sent. Always intended on changing it, but it fit that well that I decided to keep it, and I hope we don't get sued for revealing that information.
It's quite similar to Higher in some ways, the way in which the vocal melody works and how you'll have phrases which will end after the bar. You get this feeling of movement throughout the whole of the verse. It's quite interesting, and I quite like how Lance does that and how he picks up and he drops the phrases throughout. There's a lot of work gone into the vocals just to create that sense of it opening up. Yeah, I think it comes through on the record. A big thanks on that goes to Russ. I think he understood what we were trying to do, and I think he captured it quite well.
Be there with you, then you wander to the river, and she leads you when you go under and stay there until you breathe in, breathe in.
Take Me to the River was one of the first songs me and Lance ever wrote, and I think it was like the first one that kind of proved that we were able to kind of write with me sort of doing the instrumental demo and then Lance kind of finishing off the melody and the lyrics. Not really sure how I ended up into this tuning, but again, as with some of our other songs, it's just a nice kind of tuning, good kind of full chords, atmospheric sounding. Quite like this transition in the chorus.
This is the main riff from Take Me to the River. I remember having to learn how to play Take Me to the River because it was a track that existed before I joined the band, so I was just learning it as it was. And I remember thinking it was really difficult and listened through it, and I noticed that there was a bar of 2 in the middle of that riff, which I hadn't even noticed, so I thought that was pretty clever. I remember the very, very first gig I ever played guitar for Kidsmoke was a Focus Wales gig at the Stute in Roslanna in North Wales. I was absolutely bricking it, mainly because I was worried that I'd mess up Take Me to the River, but I didn't, and it was fine, and I've played it a lot of times since then, so I'm not scared of it anymore.
Yes.
Right. Cool. Good.
More.
Instrumental.
So Still Dreams was a little bit of a guitar collaboration between myself and James. So this happens sometimes where we will each bring bits and pieces to a track and then we'll just see what works best. So the bit that James wrote, which made the track, which was one of the hardest parts to play on the whole album, thank you for that, Stedge, was this bit. Which is in like the build up for the pre-chorus, and I absolutely love it. I think it's really, really clever, but it didn't make my life particularly easy in the studio.
Still Dreams is one of my favourites. Interesting fact on this one, every member of the band at some point on this song is playing a guitar. So yeah, I think that's the only time it happens on the album. In the middle section, with the drum groove, I tried to do something a little bit different, a bit more interesting, and there were a few bits where I was sort of crossing over hands between the hi-hat and the snare. When we listened back to it, we started playing around in the control room, and we reversed some of the snare drum samples. So one of the snare drum hits, we flipped it so it would play it backwards. I think it's my favourite drum groove on the album.
I think this is like my favourite song that I've ever written, kind of from the perspective of the chords. This kind of pre-chorus bit was almost Elliott Smith inspired, I guess. And for the chorus, again, I quite like these sort of quite big sounding, almost kind of atmospheric chords.
For me, this is one of James's best compositions. It just felt like a real sort of step up from some of the previous stuff, and it took me a while to settle on what I wanted to do with it. I think it had about 3 or 4 different choruses before the final one. Lyrically, it's about how life is just continuously moving, no matter how you feel, and sometimes you have to step off the merry-go-round. The song is about that feeling of knowing that you need to get back on but not really wanting to. I heard a lot of sort of Kate Bush influence on this song, and the part after the breakdown where the chorus chords come back in but the vocal melody changed, I really tried to do something similar to what Kate Bush does on Running Up That Hill. I don't think I actually nailed it, but that was the thinking behind it.
But yeah, as a track as a whole, I absolutely love Still Dreams. It's a perfect track to start winding down the album, because it's a little bit different from, well, most of the other things. It's still quite upbeat, it's still quite poppy, but it's got all of those core Kidsmoke things in it that you would expect. I think it's a really strong track.
Just left the studio.
Yeah, we're all knackered. So you know when you tune a guitar in and it says it's in tune, and then you play it and it's not in tune. So you have to tune sharper than what it's saying to get it right. It's been one of them days for us.
Tuners are liars.
Little Lazy is a standout track for me. I absolutely love it. I love its position in the album. I love the sounds, and I love the concept. Like, all credit to Lance lyrically, it's an absolute peach. It's the only track that I didn't use my Stratocaster on. I used the Telecaster. Interesting little fact. Another fact is that I did my vocals in one take while the boys went out to get chips, which I didn't get any of.
Little Easy came from dropping the high E down half a step. I think I was playing Heartache, because Heartache is a same tune. A lot of those chords kind of carry over, so it's kind of like a slower version of that song, really. I sent that to Lance around, I think, 2016. I was kind of unemployed at the time, and that was, I was definitely writing a lot more just as a way to kind of try and keep myself busy, really. And I remember that one was one that took Lance quite a long time to send back to me, so that one took 2 years or so. And I guess it's not really a typical Kidsmoke song. I guess it's probably harder to know what to do with on that one.
This song sat in my unfinished pile for a little while until I opened it up one day and something kind of clicked, and I knew what I wanted to do with it. Wilco and Jeff Tweedy were big influences on this song. The way Jeff Tweedy kind of marries up seemingly random words and phrases, I tried to do that on the verses. but then I wanted the chorus to be really direct, sort of addressing somebody who means a great deal to me. But then in contrast, I wanted the middle section to sound like that feeling when you're building up to a panic attack. And if you listen carefully under sort of all the noise and the chaos, Sophie is repeatedly saying calm down, so she's like the voice of reassurance in all that. And I just think it's a real nice moment on the album.
Little Easy is a change in pace, I think, on the album. There's a sort of ballad style thing going on with the drums. I didn't want to play around or push out too much on this one. I just wanted to keep it fairly chilled and then build with the rest of the band and come down and move within the music. So at the end of the song, I play a melody on a kalimba, and that's woven in with a sort of synth part as well. A kalimba is also known as a thumb piano, and it looks like this. You press those down and it will resonate, and yeah, that's it. I spent a lot of time trying to tune it. You have to use a little hammer to knock these pegs up and down to adjust the pitch. Very tiresome. Why there isn't an easy way. If there is an easier way to do this, please let me know. But yeah, I'm glad we persevered with it, because I think it was a really nice way to end that song, and it was really peaceful. I think it works quite well after the big build-up that you've had in the middle section. It sort of drops down into a sense of calm.
Final track on A Vision in the Dark is The Bluest You. From the response we've had from the album so far, this seems to be a lot of people's favourite song. I can kind of see why. I really like the movement, the wooziness. It's got kind of a shoegaze quality to it.
It's another one, it's kind of similar to She Takes You Under. I think we took quite a step forward sonically on this one. It's the texture really lush, and that's difficult to say. We just piled everything on it and it sounded great, so we were all super pleased with how it turned out. Highlight for me, I think, on it is, again, the guitar ending. It sounds a little bit selfish, but it's not only, but the way that it goes around and around. So we did a single version, obviously, because it was a lot shorter for radio, but the full extensive album version is, I think it's approaching 5 minutes. And quite a lot of that is the outro, but you've got all sorts of things sort of cascading in from every direction.
There's a 5-bar chord pattern over a 4-bar lead guitar part, over a 2-bar drum part, and all of those parts, once they end, they sort of restart. And what happens, because the parts are all different lengths, it means that when they start and when they finish, they will start and finish at different points. So when you listen to it, the points will align at different stages, and it makes for this really interesting sort of feel to it. It feels like everything's moving around.
It's really cool. I don't think there's any other way of describing it. And I get to go a bit nuts on guitar at the end, which is always a plus for a guitarist.
The Bluest You was definitely my favourite demo of all the demos we have for the album, and that was the one that I kind of felt should be ending the album. Just started off with the actual kind of verse chords I had. want like an instrumental track that never kind of happens. It never turns out to be an instrumental. I wanted to kind of write an instrumental around that, but then that just didn't happen. But I'm kind of glad, because as soon as I kind of went away from that and the riff went down, it just kind of, you knew that it was going to be a really cool song once we had it all worked out. Lyrically, I tried to create sort of a feeling of unease. It's about somebody with depression, but from the viewpoint of the people around them, and how it affects them. I really like the line, cut the puzzle piece, make it fit, shape it until you recognise it. I think that's my favourite lyric on the whole album. The puzzle piece is in reference to the symbol for autism. It was a lot of fun to record this one. I think Ash, Sophie and James play an absolute blinder. I think we knew early on that it was going to end the record, and I can't really imagine it anywhere else on the record. It's just a real nice way to finish the album. The ending was difficult because I knew that it just didn't feel like a song that needed, you know, most Kidsmoke songs are fairly, you know, standard structure, verse, chorus, middle, chorus. But for Bluest You, it felt like it needed something different to kind of finish it off. So that's kind of where this came from.
We really hope that you have enjoyed our little summary of A Vision in the Dark. Hope you've taken away some interesting facts and things you might not have known before. Thanks for watching.